What's up guys, and welcome to this Senate update on October 7th, 2020. So I wanted to talk about the Senate races because a lot has changed since the last time I did so. There are some ratings that have gone through the roofs and some have gone really bad, and maybe the most noticeable was Cook Political Report moves South Carolina Senate race to toss-up. I don't think it's a toss-up. I know the polls have closed, but I don't think it is finished yet. I'm going to talk about South Carolina and a few other Senate races right now today, and share my view about them. Now, South Carolina has always been a sort of safe, then likely, then lean state for the GOP, and now Cook Political Report has decided to call it a toss-up. Going to the general election, you can see that the polls have been narrowing, and at no point actually showed Harrison in front, but that does not mean that he cannot win. I think it is unlikely. I think that in the end, the president is always going to put the Republican in South Carolina across the top. How well does Trump do in South Carolina? Well, not really well. You see, no Republican has actually won more than 55% of the votes in that state since George Bush in 2004. Both McCain, Romney and Trump got below 55. So I do think that he's going to drag some down ballot people above with his coattails, but not by that much. So I definitely do think that Lindsey Graham is still going to win, despite of the polls. This is the South. This is not southern states like Virginia or North Carolina. This is South Carolina. So I'm going to put this as the lean Republican, because I believe that it's maybe even likely, but I'm going to take it lean right now, and it is going to be a seat that remains in the GOP hands. The next seat I have in focus is the one in Colorado. Now, Colorado is a state that most people will probably have concluded the result about by now. And we go to the general election and see that Cory Gardner has been lagging behind in the polls all the time, but he has really closed the gap lately. The absolutely latest result is that both Gardner and Hickenlooper fall in the polls. And if you look at the polls throughout, Gardner has not actually led a single poll. He was at 46% at one point in the beginning of September, end of August, and that's the highest he has been. And in the same poll, Hickenlooper was at 51%. So this is definitely not going to be very easy for the Republicans to win. I know that they have probably expected by now that they are going to lose it, but they're still pouring money in. I'm going to put it as a lean Democrat, because I believe that they will still have to send some money there, still have to fight for it. If they look away and decide to focus too much on other races, there might be a fluke in Colorado, though I think that is very unlikely. So it's going to go to the Democrats right now, putting them at 47 seats to the Republicans 45. The next seat is the one in Kansas. Now, I actually have discounted this for a while as being a seat that is going to go to the GOP, because Roger Marshall is the representative from the at-large district. I definitely think he's going to win that seat. I don't think he's going to be very competitive. I think he will win by more than 10 points, actually. And yeah, you don't have the same awesome polling alliance that you had in Colorado and in South Carolina. But anyway, there has been one poll with Boulder ahead, but I think that in the end of the day, this is going to be a GOP state. Roger Marshall is not the typical Trump candidate. Trump is not very popular in Kansas compared to other Republicans, and so this is going to be a GOP seat, and I put it as likely right now, though I could put it safe, to be honest. Now, next we go to the state of Montana, which of course is a state that was not meant to be in play when it comes to the Senate race. It was meant to be safe Republican, but then Steve Bullock went back on his promise not to run and decided to run after all, because he was convinced by people like Chuck Schumer. Which honestly should be a big boost for the Danes, to remind the voters of Montana that actually Bullock did not himself want the seat. He's running because he was convinced by the Democratic establishment. And that is not a good thing for Bullock. In the general election, you can see that Bullock was actually leading for a long while, but now Daines is leading again. And with just less than a month until the election, I think that he's going to be able to hold on. I mean, Bullock has not been ranked the leader in any of the predictions, it's been either toss-up, lean R, or likely R in the case of Niskanen. And even though Bullock is definitely the best candidate that the Democrats in Montana could possibly muster, I think Steve Daines is going to win that seat. And by what margin? Not a big margin. I think he's going to win it lean. I think that's quite clear that it's not going to be a 8-point or a 10-point margin. So I'm going to put that as a lean GOP seat. Now, where was I? Oh yes, next one is in Michigan. Now, everyone loves Michigan because it is a possible GOP pickup in a very unfavorable year for the GOP. John James versus Gary Peters. I just read in the news that Gary Peters is actually going ahead in the polls. He increased his lead a little bit, but it's remaining close. In the general election, it has mostly been rated as likely or lean D. RCP has it as a toss-up, which is interesting. And if you look at the polls, the lead has not been very big. I mean, Hickenlooper's lead in Colorado is bigger than that of Peters in Michigan. And yeah, not a lot of red here. Only one poll by Trafalgar Group had James ahead at 1 point. Otherwise, Peters has been leading. Now, I'm not sure if Michigan is the kind of state that is overestimating Democrats and underestimating Republicans. Yes, it has some history of bad polling. Trump won, though he was far behind in the polls. So don't discount it, but I wouldn't bet that John James is going to win right now. Though it would be fantastic if he did, because he's really someone that resembles the American dream. He's a great candidate. I think that it's going to be a lean Democratic state right now. Maybe even tilt. We'll have to see about that. Anyway, going on next, we are going to the state of Maine. Now, you all know why Maine is important. Because here we have a choice between Susan Collins, who is sort of a moderate Republican, versus Sarah Gideon, who is a typical liberal establishment Democrat. In the general election, most people have it ranked as a flip. Yes, some have it as a toss-up, but you see lean D, even likely D, and tilt D. So definitely something to look at here. Look here, Collins was actually leading for a long while. She was leading through all of 2019, then 2020 became, and suddenly they were tied, and then Collins was behind, and she is still behind. Can she win? She certainly can. But right now, the aggregate of polls have Gideon ahead by actually a quite significant margin. Susan Collins mostly at like 43, 42, 41. She needs to get the votes of conservatives that don't like her. She has to get the votes of independents, and I actually really think that the whole thing with the Supreme Court nomination is helping her, because the way she opposes to vote on a Supreme Court pick the autumn before the election could really redeem her among independents and moderates who don't like her because of that and that. But to be honest, the fact that they don't like her because of she voted yes on Kavanaugh and no on impeachment to begin with is silly. I understand why liberals wouldn't like that, but you cannot expect a lot of Republicans to vote no on a Republican Supreme Court nominee. If the candidate is nominated by the Republican president, the question should be who and how many and who moderate Democrats vote yes. And when it comes to impeachment, it should be about how many and who moderate Democrats vote yes or nay on impeachment. Because what all Republicans vote should actually be quite obvious. And now Susan Collins is far behind. People say it is because of that. And she won. She got 68% last time. So I still think she has a good chance to win. I really do, even though it looks quite unfavorable right now. In the end, the way I have to rate it, it is actually going to be a tilt Democratic seat. Yes. Now, the Democrats need to be lucky if they're going to avoid mistakes in places like Maine, Michigan, Colorado, and Arizona, because the Democrats can lose some of those seats if they are not careful, if they lose focus, but they are leading there right now. Now, the last one is, of course, the state of North Carolina. Now, Tom Tillis, incumbent, versus Kyle Cunningham, Democrat. Cunningham is sort of in the fire right now because of some so-called sexting messages with the wife of a veteran, and he is a veteran himself who's been touting that, so I think that's bad for him. Most people, people are divided. Some say it's a likely deflip, some say it's lean, some say it's toss-up, and you can make arguments for all of those things, but Cunningham is ahead in the polls. He has been rushing ahead, leading with about the same as Sarah Gideon is doing in Maine. But to be honest, North Carolina is a state that I believe is quite known for underestimating Republicans. Richard Burr ended up winning with 6 points in 2016, Trump by almost 4, and those races were expected to be razor thin, but they were not in the end. Now, the last poll where Tillis led was actually in the beginning of October, so I definitely think this is the one in play. And it all depends on how this, sort of scandal for Cunningham evolves. If it turns out that no one is making stories about it and people don't notice, then it shouldn't be bad. But if he's running a campaign on decency, he should be decent himself and not chat dirty messages with the wife of other veterans. Actually, this is a lot of blue, and you have to go far behind, back to June actually, to see Tillis leading in other polls until now. So, in the end, I think North Carolina, still, I'm going to put it as a tilt Republican state. And there are 3 here that I have not filled in, and that is because I'm going to put them all as lean GOP. Now, this assumes that the Republicans will keep the Senate if they are able to get their shit together. Of course, they might not, they might win other seats. This is going to be my current prediction. It is not looking very good, but I do think it would be very strange if the Senate flipped in a presidential year, which of course it has not done since, 1980, unless you count 2000, which I don't. It's just simply more realistic in my view, that the Senate flips in 2 years, and this is going to be more of a 2016 scenario where most seats remain with the GOP. Anyway, this is my prediction at the moment: a razor-thin Senate map with its with its 100 seats almost evenly split between the GOP and the Democrats. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. Please leave a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you soon.